Hi guys, this is Mrs. Nash, and today what we're going to do is we're going to review our math lesson on comparing and ordering fractions. Now, if you remember back in class, there were three methods that we used. Our first method, or one way that we can do this, is that I can compare using a benchmark, okay? And if you remember, the benchmarks that we used in class were 1/2 and 1/2, okay? And so if I take a look at an example, so let's work with the fractions 2/3, and let's work with 3/8. Now, if you remember, I can use a model, and so for instance, if I were to draw, remember we drew a model like this to show 1/2, and then we drew a model down here for 2/3. And if I shade two pieces, you'll notice that the fraction 2/3 is actually going to be bigger than 1/2. And then if I draw my model here for 3/8 right below, if I shade in 3, you'll notice that my fraction 3/8 is going to be less than 1/2. And so since 2/3 is larger than 1/2 and 3/8 is less than 1/2, I would actually say that 2/3 is greater than 3/8. Now, if you remember, another way that we did it is we can use common numerators. And so if I'm comparing fractions that have a common numerator, let's say I have the fractions 2/3 and 2/5. If I draw my models here, this top model is going to be my fraction bar for 2/3. 1, 2 pieces are shaded. And then down here on the bottom, I'm going to draw my model for 2/5 down here. And if you notice, even though 5 is a bigger number in the denominator in this number, these pieces are actually smaller. And the reason they're smaller is it takes more pieces to make a whole. It takes 5 pieces to make a whole here, whereas it only takes 3 pieces to make a whole here. So when I am comparing using a common numerator, which means both of my numerators are the same, the rule is going to be the numerator with the smaller number is actually going to be the bigger fraction. Okay? So just remember, when the numerators, that's the top number, are the same, the fraction that has the fraction that has the smaller denominator is bigger. All right, and then the last thing I can do when I compare and order fractions is I can use a common denominator. And if you remember, when I use a common denominator, like let's say I have 2/4 and 3/4, since my pieces are going to be the same size because I have the same denominator, one, 2 here, and 1, 2, 3. 3/4 is going to be the larger fraction because I have more of the pieces shaded. So here I would say 2/4 is less than 3/4. Okay. So when I use a common denominator, the fraction with the larger numerator is bigger. All right, after watching this little video here to review, here's what I would like you to do now. Okay, We actually have a IXL lesson that you can work on. So if you go into IXL and look under recommended skills, you're actually going to look and see it's 4th grade math skill. O23, and it says order fractions with like numerators and denominators.